And Sarah told me she would not be able to attend today.
Okay.
We are live.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. My name is Eileen Mcmahon. I am the chair of the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our December 10th meeting. We are, as we have been, meeting virtually. So we ask everybody to have patience with this system. We are also available to the public, and there is a line for the public to call in. I don't have those instructions in front of me, but I believe they are available on the city website. So the first thing we need to do is take the roll, and I would ask if you are present, say so, and if not, we'll mark that board member absent. David Bartholomew.
Present.
Sarah Copley. Lance Crawford.
Present.
Jason Desai.
Present.
Elvia Diaz. Amy Hobson.
Present.
Tamia Jones. We have Lauren instead.
Yeah, I'm here for Tamia.
Eileen McMahon, I'm present. Tim McElgay. David Nash. Randy Stout. I just saw you come in, Randy. Angel.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Jennifer Teague.
Present.
And Joelle Steininger.
Present. And David Nash just joined too.
Okay. David, you're here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And I'm hearing an echo. Is everybody else hearing me echo? Okay. Not a problem. We do have a consent agenda. Before we do that, I will just mention that I was asked by Tanya Rodriguez to present this committee with a couple of recommendations they have made, and to ask if we would join with that commission in supporting those recommendations. I believe I sent them to everyone by email in order to add them to the agenda, which does not mean we're agreeing to them. It just means we add them to the agenda for discussion. We do need to have a vote of the board, and I will make that as a motion from the chair that we add that to the agenda.
I would like to, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Eileen. Just because of the documents coming in so late, and then Brian's email coming in also yesterday, I'd really prefer, just as like a point of information, that we had a chance to look at this and put it on the agenda for next time. So that's,
Do you want to make that a motion?
well, I mean, I'd like to, I know this is my second meeting, so I don't want to get formal, but I mean, I would like, I guess I will say, yeah, I think as a point of information, I'd like to, move to put that on next month's agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
If he's asking for a point of information from a procedural Robert's rules standpoint, we don't need a motion or a second. So basically we'll be tabling it to next month's meeting for consideration.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion? Do we need a motion to table? Okay.
Let me check just to be sure. Bear with me.
Madam Chair, while Brian is looking into that, is it
Yes.
appropriate to ask maybe to have some discussion this month?
I think if we table the motion, we won't have discussion this month unless
Okay.
somebody brings it up. We don't have new business or old business on this.
Yeah, as a point of information, doesn't require a motion, a second, can't be amended. So we'll just make note that this was brought up. I think it's okay if someone wants to make a motion to include it in next month's meeting agenda. That's probably procedurally what we need to do.
Okay. I will make that as a motion from the chair then, to include it in next month's agenda.
I second the motion. This is Joelle.
Okay, so the next item on the,
We'll need to take a roll call vote.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's
So
okay.
this is a motion to include the recommendations from the Human Rights Commission, Asheville Human Rights Commission on next month's agenda. So we will go through the roll call vote. David Bartholomew.
I'm in favor.
Sarah Coakley is not present. Lance Crawford.
I'm in favor.
Jason Desai.
In favor.
Elvia Diaz is not present. Amy Hobson.
Yes, in favor.
Lauren for Tamia Jones.
Yeah, I agree.
I will agree with the motion. Tim McEllier is not present. David Nash.
Yes.
Randy Stout.
I agree.
Okay. Jennifer Teague.
Agreed.
Joelle Steininger.
Agreed.
Okay, so the motion passes. This will be held for next month's agenda. The next item is the consent agenda, which essentially is the October 29th, 2021 minutes. Can we accept the consent agenda, which basically means not contesting the minutes? Do we have a motion? Motion to approve the consent agenda. Can I
I'll make-
move to the chair?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, so we need another roll call vote for that. David Bartholomew,
Yes.
Sarah Coakley is not present. Lance Crawford,
I did not receive the consent agenda, so I will not vote on this, if that's okay.
okay. Jason Desai,
Yes.
Elvia Diaz is not present. Amy Hobson,
Yes.
Lauren for Tamia Jones.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Tim McEllier is not present. David Nash,
Yes.
Randy Stout,
Yes.
Jennifer Teague,
Yes.
Joelle Steininger.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda passes. So now we have data and coordinated entry updates from Emily.
Madam Chair, if I may, we do have a new member. Lance Crawford has recently been appointed to fill the unexpired term for his predecessor at Goodwill. So just want to make sure that we had a chance to let Lance introduce himself. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, that's okay. I'm sorry. Lance, would you like to say something? To the
Sure.
board?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Lance Crawford, the Director of Workforce Development here at Goodwill. I've been with Goodwill for about 9 years, previously as Youth Programs Manager, overseeing several of our youth programs. I know I've worked with several of you over the years, but just really glad to be a part of this group. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the board, and we're happy to have you. And I would note also that Tim Malcaye just joined. So now we are back to Emily, data and coordinated entry updates.
Good morning. Glad to see all of you. I will be brief on this today. HUD reporting season is upon us, and by us, I mean me. So I will have a lot more to tell you in the next couple months about our annual reports to HUD. Right now, the longitudinal systems analysis is in process and will be due soon. And then following that, we'll have point in time, of course, and system performance measures. So more to come on that. Otherwise, I think HMIS participation is going really well. We are continuing to have really constructive discussions with some of our partners who are not currently participating in HMIS. And then coordinated entry, I'll also be brief about this and also tell you that we'll have much more to come in the next few months. We are starting a process with our coordinated entry work group to develop an alternative for our community, for our continuum of care, an alternative to the VI SPDAT. And, we've been talking about this for a while, but we have just sort of mapped out a process to get that done in 2022. There's a lot of discussion in our field across the country about doing that exact same activity. So we have a lot of peers that we can be in communication with and other COCs. We don't have a lot of other communities that have cracked the code that we can just borrow from, but we are in this kind of learning community together with other COCs across the country. So again, much more to come on that. I think 2022 will be a big year for both data and coordinated entry in a really positive way. Happy to answer any questions. I know that was a bit vague, but there's a lot on the horizon.
I do actually have a question as to the data and HMIS. To what degree are those, is that data publicly available?
It's not at all publicly available, but I can run lots of reports and provide lots of aggregate data, but there is not there's no way for the public to access HMIS data. I will add actually that Brian and I have been talking with our Office of Data and Performance Management here at the city about developing a dashboard so that we can have more real-time information available to our community. That will take a couple of months, but that is underway. So we will be able to bring that back to you all. What we've talked about is sort of rough drafting that ourselves as staff and then bringing it to you guys first, to HIAC, for your input about, does this format make sense? But also, are these the data points that make sense for our community to be reviewing? So we'll have that coming sometime in the first quarter of next year.
Okay. Any other questions?
Emily, will the point in time count happen between now and when we meet again?
I'm sorry to tell you, I don't know when we meet again. The point in time count is on our agenda in just a bit, but it will be at the end of January.
Yeah, and our next meeting is scheduled for January 28th. So yes, it will occur before the next meeting.
Okay,
It'll be that same week.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is also Emily, Code Purple and Low Barrier Shelter update.
So Code Purple, I'm glad that Tim was able to join. I'll ask him to jump in if he wants to add to this, but I think all of you are aware of this, but we have been working on Code Purple plans since August, been meeting with providers, trying to map out what would make sense in our community this year, and also looking at the data that we had from last year to try to really evaluate what the need is so that we could adequately meet the needs. So as of December 1st, Code Purple is up and running. That's ABCCM. And again, Tim, I'll ask you to chime in if you want to. ABCCM providing up to 50 beds for men at Costello House, which is the new name for what is the old Steadfast House. And then Salvation Army is providing Code Purple for women. At Salvation Army, there are only 8 beds available. They're doing that in their like lobby area. But we are looking at what the demand is like and talking about sort of overflow and additional options if we need to do that. In last year's data from the rescue missions operation at First Congregational, we had a total of 50 beds there, 30 for men and 20 for women. And those 30 beds for men were maxed out about a third of the time. So we wanted to exceed that capacity for men this year, knowing that there's bigger demand. And then for women, almost every night was in the single digits last year. So we had just a couple nights that were 10 or more people. So I actually think the beds at Salvation Army are a reasonable capacity, but again, we'll, keep tabs on that and work on additional options if we need to do that. And Tim, do you want to add anything? Any questions about Code Purple?
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. So, no, I mean, I really don't have a lot to add after, your update. We've had code called twice this month already, and we haven't seen, a huge amount of people coming in. But again, we're just getting ramped up. The first day that we called code, the high that day was 65. And then the last day that we had code called, the high was in the 50s. So usually, if we see temperatures that high during the day, it impacts the number of people that are coming in, that night. So, but I certainly expect, our numbers to get bigger, especially as it gets colder. We've had code called for this weekend. I think the lows are going to be around 32, but I think I saw the high for Saturday was like in the 60s. So I'm kind of expecting the same kind of turnout. But again, I think as we go forward, the daytime temperatures drop, the nighttime temperatures get lower than what they are. We're going to see an increase in folks coming in.
Okay, I just have one not totally on point question. Does that mean Steadfast House is no longer operating as a shelter for women?
That's correct. We have Transformation Village.
Okay.
Basically, we just moved from Steadfast House to Transformation Village.
Okay.
So, and that's why we're able to do it, because that building that we had was empty, and so we moved in there. And that building is also 2 floors,
Right.
So it really helps us out. What we're trying to do is people that are vaccinated versus non-vaccinated. We're trying to put vaccinated on one floor, non-vax on the other floor, and kind of keep that separate. So.
Okay. Any more questions?
I'll go ahead and move on to the low barrier shelter update. Again, I imagine all of you are already familiar with this. This has been out and about over the past week, but we are not moving forward with the shelter as we had planned at the Ramada location. We just have not had the sort of buy-in and support that we need for that particular project configuration, that particular dollar amount in that location. So that project is not moving forward, but I want to be so clear that we are really committed to developing a low barrier shelter in our community, and we'll be working on that immediately. So we are going to be starting a new planning process. I feel really good about that. We're not going to be starting from scratch, I think, because we have had so much discussion over the past year. So folks are really familiar with that concept. I think we have much better community understanding about what that means and also what the need is around that. So I'm hopeful that this can be a really effective planning process. It also will be, I think, a much more inclusive planning process than what we were able to do on the Armada project. So I feel optimistic about the likelihood of getting a low barrier shelter up and running in our community, and also optimistic about a planning process that will really include folks in our community from all sectors, so that we end up with a better project plan than we, had at the beginning. And I, again, am happy to answer any questions about that.
Joelle has a question.
Yes, I was just wondering, this planning sounds like it's just getting underway, but that it's not completely starting from scratch. Is there any time frame as to
I
when
think I can give you a really good update in January, probably prior to the HIAC meeting. I think that we'll have some information coming out about what that'll look like and how folks can participate. But I don't know much more than that at this point. It's been a real whirlwind for us the last few weeks making this shift. So we are getting started just with our kind of internal group next week. And then we'll have more information coming soon.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else have any more questions?
I'm sorry, Eileen, let me add, and again, I'm sure you guys know this, but we are continuing that current shelter operation through the end of March. So working with Sunrise to be sure that folks have options. So right now, the last number I saw is that 21 people who are staying in shelter are slated for permanent housing through coordinated entry. So those folks should be moving in that time frame. We'll continue to be slating people for housing programs and working with people on other options that might be possible for them between now and the end of March. So taking this 4-month window to wind that shelter down.
Okay, any updates on the new plans for the Ramada Inn, if any, from 2 days ago? That was I think most of us probably saw that presentation. Is that going to be considered by the city council?
I see Nikki Reed, the Director of Community Economic Development for the city, on the call. Nikki, do you want to provide an update for the committee on where things stand and what's coming up before council on Tuesday?
Absolutely, I'm glad to. And hello, everyone. If I haven't met you already, I just want to take some time to introduce myself. My name is Nikki Reed, and I guess earlier in November, I was asked to serve as the Community and Economic Development Director for the department here. So I'm really glad to be with you today and hope that my presence as part of this committee becomes something that I can look forward to in the coming months. I really want to make it a part of my work as director to participate with committees and really see how I can help foster our relationships together between the city and its committees. So I'm excited about the future and working with you all in earnest around some of these really important issues. Just as a point of introduction, I've worked for the city for a number of years now. I'll be completing my 15th year this coming summer. So I really hope that I can bring some of that insight as a longtime city employee on how we can help continue our work. For the past several years, I've worked primarily in the Community Economic Development Department. I began at the city as its real estate manager and helped lead the city through several real estate initiatives. One that immediately comes to mind is the purchase of the new fire station that's being built on Broadway. Also I led the team who procured all the real estate that was needed for the River Arts District. So that's just a little bit of my background. And then more recently, I've shifted into a larger economic development role, working with companies such as White Labs on moving to Asheville and bringing jobs and investment. Of course, through that time, I also worked in deep partnership with previous community director Jeff Stoudinger and then Paul D'Angelo on doing the affordable housing bond implementation. So the $25 million of affordable housing bond dollars that was allocated to the city in a bond referendum, working primarily on the city-owned property component of that. So looking to position city-owned sites for redevelopment to support affordable housing. And so for the past several months, really, I've been really understanding what this team does, primarily Emily and Brian, within the scope and the landscape of how we serve homeless individuals and how the city plays a role in that. So learning a lot about the continuum of care, and learning a lot about a systems approach towards ending homelessness. And so I feel it's a great privilege to be able to expand my understanding and my knowledge around these issues, and really hope to use the skills that I have to help us continue to make progress. And so with that, I've been part of the project team for the emergency shelter at the Ramada, and now the permanent supportive housing proposal at the Ramada since its initiation, really. I mean, since the moment when we had residents that were moving into that shelter. So with that, I hope I can bring at least some experience and project understanding from the beginning. And as Emily said, I think, what we saw a few weeks ago is that given the amount of funding that it would really take to establish an emergency shelter in that location, where our partners were, and looking at the long-term needs for a functional and successful operation, we understood that everyone was the community and the funding partners were saying that we need more planning, and really for that funding component. That was critical. I mean, I think when we were looking at the cost to acquire the property, $9.75 million to acquire that property, plus the initial improvements that were needed to be made, and plus the annual expenses of the ongoing operation, was a lot to really understand and undertake. And so I think the partners wanted to ensure long-term success before those funding decisions could be made. But we're happy that we are reorienting that project to be on a partnership basis. And so really not just the city leading this, but to understand that we can do more and we can do better when we do it in partnership with others. And so I'm excited about this pivot that we're doing to really work in earnest with partners. And Emily is absolutely correct. We're having a meeting next week, and then we hope in January to be able to provide more of a roadmap on how that's happening. Now, in terms of the permanent supportive housing, I think we had been, especially, Brian had been working with looking at different entities who build permanent supportive housing across our nation. And I think, to me, this is analogous to, how we do affordable housing in our community as well. Paul D'Angelo, my colleague, that has now taken a job in Boulder, but one of his things he always talked about is we need a lot of different partners to come to the table to really help us with this great need. It can't just be one or the other. Like, we really need to understand how many hands at the table can help lift. And so I certainly appreciate all the partnership that I know exists within our community now, whether it's Homeward Bound, who's working on the Days In project and understanding the work that they're building on and have done in the community for years. Thinking back even when Emily was with the organization and the work that they did during that time, but also our other community partners who are assisting in Co-Purple locations and who also just assist in awareness advocacy. It really does take a lot of different players working together intentionally to make this happen. And so with looking at the permanent supportive housing, what this opportunity presented itself as a way to use a different source of capital. So not simply public dollars at the table, but then in this particular configuration with Step Up, they leverage private dollars in order to purchase the hotel, renovate the hotel, and then the public aspect of the funding really comes in with that wraparound services. So what we're starting to see is like how different models can come into our community and function to really help resolve this problem. And so I think it'll be great to hear their presentation to City Council. Of course, that final decision does rest within our City Council members. And what we are teeing up is to, one, assign that real estate contract. So the city will not be the owner of the contract any longer. We will not have any responsibilities as it relates to that real estate moving forward. That will be fully assigned to Shangri-La Industries, which is the for-profit arm of this group. And then the second component of that is a funding request from the city for $1.5 million to the nonprofit partners Step Up to provide the on-site case management and on-site services for a 3-year time frame. And the results that we're looking for is 100+ units of permanent supportive housing at the Ramada location. The city will be able to take a deed restriction on the property to ensure 50 years of permanent supportive housing use there. And through seed funding, the initial services at the $500,000 a year, that enables Step Up to get established and then hopefully diversify their funding in the future years to ensure that those services are met. So 100+ units of apartments, permanent housing. Right now that's structured as 50 for homeless veterans and 50 for the chronic homeless. So I hope that we're able then to present this to City Council on Tuesday night and see what decision they want to make. But we do believe that this was something that we felt we could recommend. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I appreciate the recognition that I am coming from this very much from my background in real estate, but really trying to learn quick on some of what both Emily and Brian have brought to the table with their expertise, and as well as what our partners know and understand from each of their viewpoints. So happy to answer any questions, but I think bottom line, I just wanted the committee to know that I'm here. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy and looking forward to our work together. I know we've got a lot to do, but I'm committed. And so thanks for having me. And like I said, happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
So
when
thanks,
you
Eileen.
say we can recommend, who is we?
So it's a staff recommendation. So certainly as public servants, that is absolutely our job, is to be the experts in this and really to provide recommendations to council that we believe meet the strategic goals of our city council within the framework of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And I don't know if David or Joelle want to speak to the voucher portion of the support for the permanent supportive housing. We've had a couple of meetings. So David or Joelle, either of you want to add anything to the discussions that have been taking place about project-based vouchers for this particular operation?
You want to go first, Joelle?
Okay.
Want me to go first? I don't care.
That's fine. I'm Joelle Steininger. I'm the homeless program coordinator at the Asheville VA Medical Center. And we have been in conversations, like Brian said, with Shangri-La and Housing Authority. And we are committed to, we're happy to have some project-based vouchers for our homeless veterans at this new project. So we're in conversation with our central office to see how we can get those vouchers and the process for allocating them. And in terms of numbers, I feel like we'll take as much as we can get and manage, but definitely would like to look at 10. So something along those lines.
And from our perspective, we have actually had an RFP out for a couple of years for up to 50 VASH project-based vouchers. So devoting 50 of our tenant-based vouchers to a project-based community, and we haven't had any takers so far. We also have an RFP out for up to 100 other homeless vouchers, and 80 of those have been preliminarily committed to Homeward Bound at the Tunnel Road location. We have capacity to do more, and we're in the process of upgrading that with HUD, making sure that they agree that we can use those numbers, and then we'll issue another RFP. We haven't made any commitments to this project except to tell them that we do have available vouchers, and we will be putting out an RFP. And they expressed some interest in that. I feel like we've struggled for many years to lease up all of our VASH vouchers and have never gotten there. So I think that having 50 dedicated units, if that's where it turns out, will help us close that gap. And of course, we know there are, well, last I heard, we had more than 200 chronically homeless people in our community without permanent housing. So we know there's a big need there above and beyond the veterans.
Okay, the concerns that I've heard from people have more to do with it being going to people from California to provide services here when I don't know about the private investment capital. It actually sounds like a good investment for an investor. But we do have very good homeless service organizations in this area. Are they not available to provide these services?
I can speak for the VASH. We would be doing the case management support, not Step Up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't addressed the service side with them. I've heard from their folks what they do in California, but our contribution will be toward the housing side, not the services.
And Nikki, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the conversations, we've had in the last couple of days with Todd. I certainly don't want to speak for Todd Lipka. He's the CEO for Step Up. But basically these two organizations have worked together for almost 10 years now on multiple similar projects. They've figured out how to do it together. They do some projects where they are co-developers, so there are funds from each organization that are intermingled, so they kind of come as a package deal. And Shangri-La, as the primary developer, has gotten very comfortable with how Step Up delivers services. They have a 97% retention rate in the properties that they've done. And of course, if you're an investor in a project like this, which is, these types of projects are extremely complicated and extremely risky from an investment perspective. When you've got a partner like that who is, keeping people housed and maintaining the rental income, then that's certainly very important to the investors in this. And it's a mix of Shangri-La's own capital, a small pool of mission-minded investors, and then they borrow from some of their against some of their existing assets. So they've got to make sure that their investment is as safe as it can be, and they have found successful partnership with Step Up, and so Step Up will be part of any service provision that for a project if council approves this to move forward on Tuesday.
And I'll just follow up by saying this is a question that's come up, so we'll be sure to address it and have Todd, who's the representative from Step Up, who will be speaking at council Tuesday night. We'll be sure to cover this because this has become a question that we've understood from the community. And we have heard yesterday, Todd answered a number of questions around this with the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods when we met with two of their executive committee members. And from what I understand, they'll have a regional manager who one of the first duties of this regional manager that serves for the Southeast region, Arthur Murray, he's out of Atlanta. He'll be onboarding the site early on and hiring locally. So the case managers, of course, and everyone who there's, I think, a couple staff members that will actually live on site will be local hires. So I think more to come on that. I don't want to really speak for them because I don't. I think some of those details are directly heard from Todd or better, but I understand that that's at least something that we can count on. And so I'll be sure that we cover that in the city council meeting on Tuesday.
Also, I could weigh in that when we were in talks with Shangri-La, I did get to meet Todd and hear his presentation and his data metrics, and sounded like they absolutely know what they're doing, and I feel pretty confident about their services.
Anything else? Okay, so next thing on the agenda is the 2022 point in time count. Emily and Brian.
You want to go, Emily?
Yeah. Sure. Point in time count is already here. Somehow a whole year has gone by. We have started planning. We've had one planning meeting with folks who were heavily involved in last year's count. We still have some decisions to make. So point in time count by HUD requirements has to be sometime within the last 10 days of January. What we have traditionally done in our community is the last Wednesday of the month. Last year, we had some discussion about possibly bumping that back one day and doing Tuesday instead, so that on Wednesday we could count folks at Haywood Street, which is such a big hub for people, so that we could ask them where they were the night before. We can't count them on Wednesday to say, where are you going to sleep tonight? Because at that point in the day, you know, anything could change between now and then. And so the count just doesn't work that way. So I've not been able to connect with anybody at Haywood Street yet, but am working on that to talk about that possibility. So that means the count will either be January 25th or 26th. And I think that we will largely follow the same format that we had last year. I felt like that worked really well. I think that was good methodology for us. So we had a lot of volunteer participation, 40-some people participated in that street count. We had really detailed geographic areas for teams to cover so that we had better coverage than we've had in the past. And so we're looking to just replicate that this year. We'll certainly be asking for volunteers. I think one other change that we'll be looking at this year compared to last year is last year, for the first time that I can remember anyway, we did a street count that evening and then again very early the next morning to try to catch folks who we might not otherwise have connected with. And we sent volunteer teams out at 6 a.m. The day after, and I think that didn't actually work very well. They either didn't find a lot of people or people were asleep and didn't want to talk to them. And so we didn't end up collecting a lot of data from that. So what I think we will do this year instead is ask our professional street outreach teams in our community to do some just really targeted outreach that day after the count to see if they can connect with folks, and we'll coordinate coverage so that we have a good distribution across the community. So all of that is in motion right now. And the sheltered count, of course, very straightforward. Most of that data we can pull directly from HMIS. And then for our shelters that aren't participating in HMIS, we'll work with them on paper forms and collecting that information. I think that is it. We'll have a few more planning meetings between now and the count, of course. And we, again, will be sending out information about volunteering and just about additional logistics as those come together. Brian, do you want to add anything, or does anyone have questions?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, any questions? Okay, next item on the agenda is appointment of vice chair. We do not have currently a vice chair, and my time as chair is limited. So we do need a vice chair. Would anybody like to nominate somebody or themselves for that position?
Can I nominate Mr. Crawford?
Sure. We have one nomination, which is Lance Crawford. Now, first I need to ask Mr. Crawford, do you accept this nomination?
I will have to decline, with this being just my first meeting.
Oh, we thought we could get you. Gee. Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Eileen?
Sure.
So will the vice chair automatically move into the chair position, or would this be a vice chair position that they would be filling, and then we would be filling a chair position?
I think that's up to the committee. We need to have a vice chair in place to temporarily, run meetings in the absence of a chair. Our current chair's term ends in February, and she's decided not to reapply, if I understood that correctly. Yes. So we need to have a vice chair in place to conduct the meetings until such time as we figure out a permanent chair. And if the vice chair that does get appointed wants to step up into that role, that's certainly possible, but it's not obligatory.
Well, I'll conduct meetings till I'm off, so they may not have anything to do. I wouldn't think it would be automatic, but obviously would be seriously considered.
I'd like to recommend Sarah Copley. I know she's not on the call today, so.
I would agree with that recommendation. She's not here, so we can.
I will follow up and reach out to her and see if she would be interested. And then at our January meeting, we can formalize that appointment.
Okay, that makes sense. Any other nominations?
I know David Nash wants to get back into that executive role, doesn't he?
I have served my time.
Okay. Okay, so that will also be on the agenda for next month. Do we have public comment? Is there anything we need to listen to from the public? Christina, still here?
Yes, I'm still here. I am just checking on that right now.
Okay.
No, we do not have public comments, and there is no one in this speaker queue.
Okay. Are there any other matters that need to be brought before the board before we adjourn?
I did want to ask for clarification around last month we had talked about meeting more regularly, and I thought that there was some conversation around that the city would be looking at availability times to continue to be able to do virtual meetings, and just wanted to circle back to that to see if that would be a possibility for us to start in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think we're incredibly constrained in what we can do when everything happens in between meetings. It sort of limits our input.
And I can chime in there because, again, this is something that I feel like is in my new role as director, I'm really wanting to support staff and support the committee work that we do. And so I'll be taking a look at all the several committees that our department manages. We're involved with the Housing and Community Development Committee, that's a council committee, as well as the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, this committee, and then the Home Consortium. So that's quite a lot for our small team. And so we're trying to really identify some ways that we can continue to support that. So I can certainly help with that and take a look at that and help guide that through. And so I think, when is the next meeting currently scheduled? Has that been set yet?
Yeah, it's
January
January 28th. Yeah.
January 28th. Okay.
And you might also clarify our mission.
I think all that's good stuff, and I'm ready. I mean, I think Brian and I have had numerous conversations about how this committee intersects with the continuum of care and the framework around our federal obligations and things like that. So again, learning a lot, but also trying to learn too how I can assist with that. And so I ask for your patience only because, I don't just so you know, we've had some staffing changes with the city of Asheville. Our community development director, Paul D'Angelo, has taken on a new job. We have some vacancies. So we are in a bit of really having some issues with being understaffed that we're trying to overcome as well. So I think I just want to say that I hear that, and I definitely hear in all the contexts that we've been speaking about, as well as, the planning that we're thinking about for emergency shelter, just how we can leverage our committees to really help inform the process, help improve the process, help provide policy guidance and support actions that we take to council. I mean, I think I've heard all of that just in the context of this short meeting that I've been here. And so I think I'm, like I said, I'm excited about participating on a more robust basis with all of our committees and really helping to see how we can truly function. And if meeting regularly is part of that, I think that's something that we'll all want to consider, but I'm also hearing other things. So I think I'm going to continue to listen to staff and this committee on how we can make improvements going forward. So if it's okay, I think let's plan on I'll be here at the next meeting, and we can kind of continue this dialogue in terms of how does mission and frequency of meetings, like how does all that really function together for what we're trying to accomplish with the committee relationships and how it informs council policy. So I'm ready. I know you are all too. So I'll be happy to join us next time, and we can continue that dialogue on how to make good progress.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Happy holidays.
Bye, everyone.